Yes, welcome back to Home Studio Q&A here on Studio Live today. My name is Pete and this is our show where I try to help you solve your home and mobile recording problems, whether you're using Garageband, your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, your PC. We don't care. We will try and answer all questions. And the beautiful part is, it is not just me and one guy and one guy's brain. We've got the power, the might of the Studio Live Today community behind us here. We've got a bunch of folks here live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're watching on the replay or listening to the podcast, don't worry, we love you just as much. You can leave a comment on this show, and that is what become the questions for future shows. And if you are listening on the podcast, you can hit me up, pete@studiolivetoday.com, if you want to get in touch. We will jump into the questions very shortly here. But what we do every week on the show here is we go through a feature topic, and this week is no exception. So we're going to talk about albums. Should you release an album? Are albums even a thing anymore? Is album culture dead? Is it all about the singles? Well, this is something I get asked an awful lot from folks starting out. They'll say, Pete, I've got some music in me. Do I do an album? Do I do an EP? Do I do a single? How do I get started? What do I do? Well, like most things in home recording, the answer is a big fat it depends. Your mileage may vary. So the reason that this question is even being asked is that albums have kind of been taken over by singles culture, and this is mainly thanks to things like streaming and playlists and people listening to individual tracks. Some may say our attention spans these days, with all of the social media and all the digital stuff going on, have been depleted. And I'd probably agree with that. I know for me, sitting down and just putting a record on or a CD on or a cassette tape on, like I did in the old days, and just listening to music is not something I do. I tend to listen to music when I'm doing other things, when I'm multitasking, when I'm on the go. And more appealing than an album is listening to singles and putting a playlist together. And this isn't new. We've been doing mixtapes for decades, so it's not a new thing to compile a bunch of different songs by different artists, but it is a different thing to have this mentality of releasing the songs before the album. If you think back to the day, your favorite band, they would go away in the studio 3, 4, 5 years, they'd come out and they'd go, here's our new album, and they'd drop their album, and then you'd buy and listen to their album. Now, as time progressed, it changed around a bit that maybe they would release a single or 2 singles before the album, and then bring the entire album out. Where it's at now is artists aren't even releasing albums, and if they are, it is just a collection of the last 10 singles that they've created. So it doesn't have any of that sort of feature, what is like a concept album. Bands and artists aren't really doing that sort of thing these days. So are albums dead? Do they have a place? Well, I've got some opinions on that we'll get into in just a moment. So the main answer to this question for you as a music creator is, why are you creating music? What are you creating music for? Are you creating it to generate streams, to become the next Spotify or SoundCloud star? Is it to generate a big fan base? Do you want a whole bunch of people listening to your music? Is it for personal satisfaction? Do you just want to put out a quality product? Well, they're the questions you need to ask up front, because depending on your goals and your aims and what you want to do, will prioritize whether you need to focus in on singles, whether you should be releasing EPs, or whether you need to worry about albums at all. The key thing here, though, is don't overthink it. If you're sitting there right now and you've not released anything, and the idea of an EP or an album is so daunting that it makes you just kind of clam up inside, then a single's probably the right thing to do. And I honestly recommend that. The whole reason that on this channel I say create, record, release, not create, record, and then eventually release, is that I think that the benefits of actually getting your music out there far outweigh the benefits of spending a whole bunch of time compiling 10 or 12 or 14 songs before you actually share anything. So I think the answer here is a hybrid approach. I think that when you're starting out, the best thing to do is to create a song, release it or share it, and gather feedback. The reason I say that is that if you go away and in isolation you just create 10 songs and then you put them all out and then people listen to them and give them feedback, if you are doing something wrong, or if you're doing something that's not perfectly right, or that's making your songs sound less good than they could, then you're not going to know that. And you may do that same thing 10, 12, 14 times on every single song. If you release one song and then another song and then another song, what happens is you learn from those and you get feedback and you get better. So my recommendation is to start small, chunk it down. Everything in life can be overwhelming if you try to do the whole thing. You can't boil the ocean. You need to take it down, chunk it down step by step. And if you create that album in a vacuum and then release it, you won't be getting the benefit of that feedback along the way. But I want your opinion. What do you think about this? Let me know. We'll jump at the end of the show if you've got any opinions, or if you throw them in the chat here now, or if you're watching on the replay, let me know in the comments below. Do you think albums are dead? Do you still listen to albums? And maybe what's your favorite album? For me, Radiohead, OK Computer. I can listen to that thing start to finish over and over again. By far my favorite album to listen to. Oh, that was a rant. That was a feature topic, but also a rant. But yeah, let me know what you think, if you think albums are a good thing. And it's a good segue because, as I mentioned in the pre-show, if you were around straight after this show, or if you're watching on the replay, there'll be a link in the description of this one. You can head over and check out Andy and Stu, who have released an album as the Indigo Sunsets, and they've released, I think, 11-track album. But here's the thing. They kind of did exactly what I was talking about. They were creating songs, sharing and releasing them, gathering feedback, going back in, recording the next song. So they were benefiting from the best of both worlds. They were releasing songs, they were sharing songs, and now they've been able to tweak and refine those songs, pull them into an album, release the album. So there you go. Indeed. And Gary Hubbs is here, says, can't boil the ocean. 100%. And justice for all just feels good to me. That's Darren Daniluk and sharing his favourite album. Let's continue on here. Like I say, if you do have any other questions for me here today, if you want to share your information about albums, you can do so. But if you do have a question, please just pop the word question in front of it. That will just help me out. I put it in the wrong spot. It's showing at the bottom there. Let's put it up there. Oh, it's in two places now. If you've got a question, just pop question in front of your comment, and that will ensure that I see it in the chat. And I'll be able to circle back and get to that one. Let's jump in, though, and start looking at some of the questions that have come in through the week. If we bring up my screen here, and we will talk to these as we go through as well, again, for the folks who are on the audio version. First question is here from Dalton Stevens. This is about audio interfaces. And Dalton says, is there a link to a USB 2.0 to USB-C? So this is in relation to a video I did about the Steinberg UR22C, which is my current favorite and used audio interface. And it's actually a USB-C interface. So the question here from Dalton is, can you link USB-C to USB 2.0, or what's often called USB-A? And the answer is yes, you can. So the good thing here is that USB-C is completely backwards compatible with USB-A, and to get an adapter from USB-A to C, or a cable that goes A to C, is super simple. In fact, most of your modern interfaces actually ship with a cable that is just USB-C to A, because they realize that right now here in 2020, not a lot of people have USB-C gear. Most people still have USB-A. So if you're buying a brand new interface from Focusrite, their third gen, like the Scarlett 2R2 third gen or the Scarlett Solo third gen, or a Steinberg UR22C, they will come with that C to A cable in the box. You can, of course, then get a USB-C to USB-C cable and benefit from the faster speeds if you have gear that has USB-C. So hopefully that helps you out with that one. Let's move on to our next question. Now, this is talking about cables, and I did a video on the difference between TS, TRS, and TRRS cables. And I've got a question here from Tono Gutierrez, says, why is it balanced or unbalanced? So TS is unbalanced mono, TRS is balanced mono or unbalanced stereo, and TRRS is stereo plus a mic. What would be a balanced stereo? Does that exist? So this is a good question, and it's one that confuses people when you start out with home recording, and that is, what cable do you use to connect your gear, I nearly swore, your gear to your other gear? And the answer is it depends, as with most things. So if we take this through step by step, TS, which stands for tip sleeve, that is a mono cable. So that's your standard classic guitar instrument cable that is sending one channel of mono audio and a ground signal. So the tip and the sleeve are the two wires in there, one sending the sound, one is the ground so you don't blow stuff up, and that's it. So that's where we start from. You've then got TRS, which has a second wire. Now, this can be used in two purposes. You can either use it as a balanced cable, which means it has two copies of the signal, it inverts one, and then it flips it back around at the end. And that just helps you reduce noise and interference in the cable itself. Or it can be used for stereo. So that's your classic 3.5mm headphone jack. That is a stereo TRS connection. So that is an unbalanced connection because instead of using the second wire for the inverted flipped version of the first one and just being mono, it uses that for the other channel. So you get the two channels of stereo, but you get them unbalanced. So you don't get that protection from interference. TRRS is the newest, and that combines the stereo TRS, your 3.5mm headphone jack, but it also has a microphone. It has a third wire in there. Yep, tip, ring, sleeve. So it has 4 wires in there, your ground, and then 3 wires to carry your audio signal. 2 going one way, sending the stereo out, and 1 coming back in for your microphone. Is that confusing? Clear as mud? So the concept of balanced stereo, as you can tell by that explanation, doesn't really exist because to have stereo, if you've got a TRS, tip, ring, sleeve, you'd need another 2 wires. You'd need 5 in total to have balanced stereo. So instead, in the studio, what we use is dual TRS. So if you're looking for stereo balanced audio, you'll need a cable that at one end has 2 1/4-inch TRS connections. So 2 balanced connections at one end, 2 balanced connections at the other end. That way you've got 6 wires altogether. You've got your ground and your 2 wires for your balanced on one side. You've got your ground and your 2 wires on the other side. That connects to your stereo out of your one bit of gear and into your stereo ins, your left and right of the other bit of gear. Hopefully that helps you out. I know it's not an easy thing to explain, but hopefully that gives you a better idea of what's going on here and will help you and others out with that. We'll continue on here and then we'll circle back. Again, if you're here live and you would like to ask a question, just put question in front of your question. And John here in the chat says, never knew what TRS was for. You learn something new every day. And look, that's probably that's the whole point of why I like to do this show, because I learn things from you folks. And hopefully there's going to be a few things that you'll pick up along the way that will help you with your home recording. And not that you need to know that it's tip, ring, sleeve, but understanding that you got different wires and the number of wires is going to be different in each one. Let's continue on. So USB drive. I did a video about USB drives not working in iOS with your iPhone or your iPad. And we have a question from Yon, says, I ordered a WD, Western Digital, My Passport 3.2. Is it that easy to format to exFAT? I saw other vids and they do other things. It's confusing. So I want to break this one down. If you are using a Mac or a PC, you'll probably realize that there's different formats that your hard drives and your USB flash drives can be in. So Mac uses a standard called HFS and HFS Plus, and on your Windows PC, it will use something called exFAT, FAT, or NTFS. Now, if you plan to use your drives with your Mac and PC as well as your iPhone or iPad, they'll need to be either in the standard Mac format, because Apple like that, the HFS format, or they'll need to be in an FAT format, either FAT32 or exFAT. If they're in NTFS, which is Windows standard format, they simply won't work. Excuse me. So yeah, if you do buy a new drive, chances are it will be formatted in FAT. Excuse me, frog in the throat. Chances are they'll be formatted FAT out of the box. If they're a Mac-specific drive, they'll probably be formatted in an HFS format, and they'll work with iOS. It's only if you plug it into a Windows PC and choose to format it as NTFS that you're going to have problems. So, yeah, if you buy a USB drive, it should work out of the box with iOS. If it doesn't, you'll just need to plug it into a Mac or a PC. Unfortunately, you can't format a drive in iOS, and then make sure it is either HFS or a FAT format, and you'll be good to go. Let's continue on. Question here from Michael Murray. Now, this is a question I get asked a lot, and I wanted to make sure I covered this here. So this is related to a video where I show how to connect a USB MIDI keyboard in Garageband. And Michael says, hi, quick question. The iPad Pro only has one USB-C port. It sure does. How can I use wired headphones where the USB port is connected to the MIDI keyboard? Is there a way to have the audio output from Garageband to the MIDI keyboard and then headphones connected to the keyboard? So short answer is no. There's not, unfortunately, but there are ways around this. So the simplest way that you can use, which is to connect it to an audio interface. So if you have your iPad, so in my case, I got the iPad Pro 2020, you can connect it up to an audio interface via USB-C, and then you can plug in your MIDI through your audio interface. If you don't have an audio interface, no problem, because there are actually a heap of devices, such as the one I'm holding in my hand here from Cable Creation. I'll just bring this one over here. A heap of devices like this, which is a USB-C hub. So this will take your USB-C connection out of that you plug into your iPad Pro, and then in the case of this one, you've got two USB ports, you've got SD card readers here, you've got HDMI out, USB port there, USB-C pass-through, even a network adapter here. So you can get all sorts of different versions of these that do a really, really good job. So this is what I would recommend. This one doesn't actually have, in fact, I'm holding up this one and then I'm like, wait, this one doesn't actually have the headphone jack. Get one with a headphone jack. I don't need a headphone jack because I use this with my audio interface. So I have this here. This plugs in through a powered USB hub. My audio interface goes into the hub. That all goes through this thing, and we're off to the races. But if you don't have a headphone jack, there are smaller versions of this, which I've shown in previous videos, where you can actually do that. You can actually connect it up to your iPad Pro, and then you'll have your USB, you can have HDMI out, and you can have your headphone jack, and that will help you monitor your audio. There's also a little USB sound card that is sold on Amazon and eBay. I've reviewed that as well. It's about $10. If you want the cheapest solution, that's the way to go. It's a little tiny plastic USB sound card. Audio quality is not great for your monitoring, but it does work. And that basically has three or four USB ports and a 3.5mm jack. It's a hub slash USB audio interface. So a little miniature audio interface that just gives you the audio input and output via 3.5mm TRS, which we've just learnt about what TRS is all about in the next one. Well, let's go one more question here, and then we'll jump over and see if we have folks who have questions here from the live chat. Now, this one's about GarageBand, for our GarageBand using Friends GarageBand iOS. Fade in and fade out using automation is something that I show how to do in this video that I'm showing on the screen and in other videos as well. Dr. Boom, cool name, Dr. Boom says every time I did this, it crashed. So here's the thing. Right now, in October 2020, there is a bug with GarageBand iOS on some devices sometimes. Yeah, could it be more vague? Where when you go into automation and you start automating, it will crash. So if you are experiencing that problem in GarageBand where you go into automation, you start moving things around and your GarageBand crashes, then there's not really much you can do. First thing is make sure you've saved beforehand. So save out of your GarageBand project before you do any automation right now. That's just good. That's good advice all the time anyway, but especially while we have this bug. And then if you turn on and off, before you touch any points, in the top left corner, if you turn on and off the little automation button, then that can help you out. In fact, why don't we give you a quick demo? Because I have my iPad sitting right here and it is displayed on my screen, I can actually do this. So here we are in GarageBand. This is what we're talking about. So if we tap here and then we tap again and then we tap on automation, it's going to bring up these. Now, before we just grab and move these automation points, what can help with this bug is if you kind of just turn this on and then turn it back on, off again, it kind of engages things. And if then here at the end, where we've got our fade out, if we wanted to start adjusting our fade outs here at the end, we can just grab this one and move it, whoop, whoop, we can move it around to our heart's content. I'll undo that because I'll confuse myself and I'll say, why did I actually do that? And I'll be, oh yeah, I was demonstrating how it works on the show. So that is my advice on that one, to make sure that you don't have those issues, because yeah, it's a pain in the butt when you've been working hard for a long time and then suddenly you go in and yeah, you've lost all that work because you've tapped automation to do a fade out and your iPad or so your GarageBand iPhone or iPad crashes. Less than ideal, right? Alrighty, let's come back on over here. Oh, we've got a lot of folks sharing their favourite albums. We've got Dan Ekberg saying, for me, it's a toss-up between Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning. My favourite would be Opus, Watershed. Oh, we've got a lot of folks, a lot of Nirvana. I'm sure some people love Nirvana. We've got a lot of folks with some love for Metallica, by the looks of it. A few metalheads, go the metalheads. And Gino says, yeah, fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Oof. There you go. And Jade Star, not surprisingly, Slayer, Rain in Blood for me over Metallica. Very cool. Best 29 minutes of my day. Yeah. Some albums, they don't even have to be long. They can just be cool. Righty dokie, we're jumping here into the chat. I'm going to scroll up and then I'm going to scroll down and then see if we have any questions here. Once again, put the big word question in front. That's going to help me out. Do what Cody Bradley did here. Question: does it matter what order your songs are in? Also, my favorite album is The Gist of It by my friend The Drawn, Dennis Watts. There you go. And see, the thing is that a lot of people's favorite albums are going to be more and more obscure because more people are releasing more music, and that's a good thing. So it's not going to be that, like at the moment, I say Radiohead, other people say Metallica, Slayer, whatever. I think we're going to find that in the next 20 years, there's going to be some more of our independent artists. I'm already digging. Most of the music I listen to, probably 80%, is from the Studio Live Today community. Not just because I do it on shows on Your Music Live every week, but because I just dig listening to it. People are making really cool music. Yeah, good question around the order of songs, and I think it does matter. I think it is important if you want to go down the album path and you want to create a listening experience. I think the order of songs is important. The old standard used to be you always have to track one's always got to grab people's attention because no one's going to get past track one if track one is a slow, boring just journey through 4.5 minutes. So you want track one to be something that kicks in and it kind of represents the album. You want your kind of best singles to be around track 3 and 4 to really make sure that you get the best benefit of people listening to 3 or 4 songs, but also setting your single there. That's what people have usually done. I mean, 5 to 9 is usually the filler, to be very honest. And it's not that that's bad stuff, but that's the way that I've always looked at is that's that sort of wasteland zone that some people won't get to, and if they do, they're probably getting track 3 or 4, and then I think you have to finish strong. I always like the last song to kind of put tie a bow on the end of your album. And now that's my opinion. If other people here have your opinion, let me know because it's an interesting one. Does it matter? I mean, some people will just hit shuffle on your album anyway, so it probably doesn't matter that much these days. But a good question, and thank you for asking it. Let's scroll on down. More people sharing more favorite albums, which is very, very cool. Question here from Sean McMahon. The question, wouldn't a ground loop adapter be useful in this case? If you're talking about, balanced and unbalanced cables, so you can use things that are power conditioners. You can use ground loop adapters. You can use ground power conditioning power boards, and different mixers have different functions like that. Yeah, so it's not just about whether it's balanced or unbalanced. You can still get interference and distortion and other problems in a balanced cable even, especially if you've got some ground hum or some ground loops going on. And it is important if you're getting that weird like 50 hertz or 60 hertz, depending what country or part of the world you're in, hum, then you may need to look at your power setup. Either try a different power point, get a power board that has some power conditioning features built into it, and just try a few different things. If you're mobile, this is why I love mobile. I've solved people's problems before just by saying, hey, instead of plugging into AC power, grab a portable USB battery and plug into that and use that as your power. And that way you are off the grid. There is no ground hum, there's no ground loops when you're not plugged into AC power, when you're just using DC power from a battery. So that is a good solve for a mobile studio if you're having that problem. Joe Gamlin, hello to you. Question: what are some ways to mix distorted bass? Carefully. So hopefully you're talking about deliberately distorted bass, not that you've just turned the bass up too loud and you're getting digital distortion. Ways to mix distortion, if it's digital distortion or clipping, is to re-record it. There's no way to fix it if it's actually distorted. If you are deliberately recording distorted bass, then what I see that people do wrong with the distorted bass is that they'll use all the same things they usually use on bass, like they'll add compression, they'll try and EQ it to pump up the bass. If you've got a good distortion plugin or a distortion pedal that you're playing through, or you're amping up, or you're miking up an amp playing bass, you're probably already getting a tone that is going to be enough. So I tend to under-process. If I've got distorted bass, I tend to not touch it too much. Sometimes I'll even remove some of the bass. But be careful with things like compression because it is already compressed. A distorted signal is compressed by its nature. If you look at it, look at the waveform of a distorted signal versus a clean signal. Your clean signal will have your peaks and your troughs going up and down. Your distorted signal will be like a sausage. It'll be a square waveform. So you don't want to compress it. That's going to overdo it. And then it's just about balance. Like most things in mixing are about balance. In fact, mix engineers used to be called balance engineers because all they were really doing was balancing out the different audio, different channels of audio, balancing it out. So that's my sort of basic tips on mixing distorted bass. And again, it will depend as well on what type of song you're mixing it in with. What are your guitars doing as well? Is it metal? Is it like very heavy versus sort of a distorted bass you're using like a Ben Folds 5 style distorted bass, like a fuzzy bass? It can be very different. But good question, and one that I don't think we've had here on the channel before. So thank you. As I'm scrolling through, Gary Hubbs, shocker. My favourite album is Master of Puppets. I know. Yes. And Stu Cash is, yes, we've got NTFS, XFAT, WD, FAT, HFS, iOS, TRS, TRRS. I know, we are all about the acronyms here. Well, I'm not, but unfortunately the industry is. And that's why I started this channel, because I didn't understand any of this stuff and I wanted to learn it. And I thought, hey, I can't be the only one struggling with this stuff. Other people must be struggling as well. Quick coffee break. Oh, that's some good coffee today. Drinking from my Studio Live Today coffee mug. You can get your own Studio Live Today mug or t-shirt at studiolivetoday.com/merch. Got to throw the shameless plug in there from time to time. Question here from Arima. Apologies on the pronunciation. Question, is the Complete Control M32 good for producing? Amazing videos and great tips, thanks. Now, I've not used any of the Complete Control gear. So unfortunately, my answer is going to be a quick and simple one, which is, I don't know. But it really comes down to, when you're looking at gear that you're using to produce, it comes down to what you are trying to produce. So what music you're producing. So here, I'll give you a quick generic answer to this. If you're, say, an acoustic musician, you play acoustic guitar and vocals, or you play guitar and vocals, or keyboard and vocals, I think that you just start out with like a 2-channel audio interface, something like a Steinberg UR22, a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. I think if you're doing more complex things, especially if there's live components in what you're doing, something like a mixer is a good idea because you can bring together different components. Once you start getting into other pieces of production gear, and look, I'm not exactly sure what the M32 does, but once you get into the more advanced stuff, I think some people jump into that too soon and they get overwhelmed by the options that they have with what they're using to create. So I recommend starting smaller. The good thing about audio gear is that it kind of holds its value pretty well. So if you're going down a typical journey, you could grab an audio interface for $100, use it for a year, and then sell it for 80. Like legitimately 70-80% of value can be retained. You can then go out and buy yourself, like I have, the $400 Zoom Live Track L8, which is a really nice mixer, hybrid mixer audio interface. And look, when I outgrow this, which may happen, hasn't yet, and probably won't for a while, and I want to get something else, I want to get a PreSonus Live Studio with like 20 channels or whatever, then I'll sell this and I'll probably get 80% of my value back for this, and then continue on. So step by step, I think, in terms of what gear you use and what's good for producing, step by step is always my advice on that. Your mileage may vary. You may want to jump in with both feet and grab a really cool piece of gear and then learn as you go. There's no right or wrong in this stuff. But thank you for your question. Scrolling on down. Oh, I've scrolled too far. I've probably missed a bunch of questions here. We'll come back up and just see if there's anything that I've missed. Otherwise, I may have to get anyone to ask it again if I do miss it. Question from Dalton. It's Dalton Stevens. Does the UR22C work with Android, and does the micro USB fit in the 5-volt port inside the audio interface? So to answer the second part first, yes, the 5-volt port is a micro USB. Is a micro USB? It is still, yes. Because it uses USB-C. Yes, sorry. I was getting confused there because the old one, the UR22 Mark II, used micro USB and USB-B. So it had the two types of USB connections. And the new one has the USB-C connector, which is for power and data. And then it has a power only, which is a micro USB 5-volt port. Whether it will work with Android, it should. Now, I don't use Android, so I say it should because I've never tried it. But other people who have been using Android have used audio interfaces with Android just using an OTG cable and have told me it works. So I can't personally vouch that it will work, but I can tell you that other people have told me it has. We'll scroll back up and I'll just see if we've got any final. No, I think I've answered all the questions, at least the ones that had the word question in front of them. No, I haven't. We've got a question here from Tashawn, which is it better to release 100 low quality songs or release no songs at all? I have a high quality equipment. I don't have high quality equipment at the moment, but I want to release songs. Any input? This is a great question. This is a really, really good question. So I'm glad you asked it. It does depend. It depends on exactly what you mean by low quality. I think that, and by release, because I say create, record, release, and I believe in that. And I say that on every show that I do, and it's my mantra here on Studio Live today. I believe that you should be creating, recording, and releasing. Now, whether releasing means releasing to Spotify and Apple Music and iTunes, or whether releasing means releasing from yourself, sharing, getting feedback, the second part is way more important. The first part is cool. And if you've got some songs and you think they're cool and you dig them and you want to release them so that people can stream them on Spotify, more power to you. Do it. There's really no downside, but there's a heap of plus side. Here's the thing. People have this perception that they need to say, if I share something before I'm perfect at it, then no one will ever take me seriously because they'll look back at the stuff I did that was crap when I first started, and then they won't respect me when I'm actually producing really cool music. That's not really how it works because, A, people don't really care about that anymore. People don't care so much about you and what you're doing, especially if they don't like it. We tend, as creators, we tend to overthink what people will think of what we do and what people will react to when it comes to what we do. So that's sort of part one of it. And part two is that, you're going to get so many benefits. You're going to get so much feedback if you start sharing music that is going to help you with your music. Again, if you create 100 low quality songs in a vacuum with no feedback because you haven't shared any of them, how do you know that you're not doing something that, one little tweak might have changed your entire process and made you produce much better songs? Or how do you know that you got the self-confidence that maybe they're really cool? Maybe people say to you, hey, you say this is low quality. I think this rocks. I think this is great. I think this is excellent production. So, my view on that is create, record, release. But choose where you want to release to. So we've got the Create, Record, Release Facebook group, which I'm obviously biased towards, but is a great place to share music. But find your forum, find something that's people producing the same sort of music, because other music producers are good people to start tapping in with and getting feedback from. And consider the source too. So, after I say that statement, I then think of some of the places that you can share that maybe are not as productive or will not give you productive feedback and opinions. But if you find a trusted, safe place to share, you'll get feedback, you'll create good songs, and you'll continue improving. So thank you for sharing. We'll continue on. And Desolate Morning says, I say release it. Yeah, absolutely. Just do it. Just get it done. Get your stuff out there. Additional tip here from Jade says, with distorted bass, it's good to use EQ to get different frequencies compared to the distorted guitars playing metal. Yeah, great point. Complementary EQing of guitars. I think I need to do a video on this. Excuse me. This is how my brain works. I won't remember this unless I add it to my video list here. But I think this would be a cool one to do a video on this week. Complementary EQ of guitars. Because what you want to do with your guitars is all guitars and all basses kind of have similar sort of frequency ranges. And the difference between getting a wall of guitar sound that is going to sound epic and a muddy mid-range mess is your EQ. And sometimes you need to do some things in EQ that don't even seem like you should be doing them. You're pulling out frequencies that maybe you think, hey, don't I want to enhance that mid-range frequency in this guitar? But if you do it on one, if you say you do a boost on one guitar and a cut on the other, they can really come together nicely, especially if you're doing left and right guitars. And it's the same with your bass. If your bass has a lot of frequency, when you distort it, it usually pushes it up into the mid-range a lot more. If you actually put a cut there where your distorted guitars are going, you get this nice fuzzy distorted bass going at the low end, and then your mid-range is filled up with that beautiful wall of guitar sound. So excellent tip there from Jade. Thank you for contributing and adding to my answer. I think I said at the start, that's what this community is all about. I don't have all the answers. I'll give my opinion, and then I'll lob it over to the Studio Live Today community, and then they can continue answering and helping out. Next question we have here is from Andrew Cast. His question says, I'm looking to use 2 mics and use an iPad with an interface to mix and send this out to front of house, but use the interface for direct monitoring. Is this possible with zero latency? So yes, depending what I'll just break this down. Depending what gear you're using. So if I just bring it back, so you've got two mics and use the iPad with an interface. So you got two mic. Let's just say you got two separate microphones. You're going through say a Steinberg UR22C, which is what I use. Two channels in there. You want to use direct monitoring there, but you also want to send that audio out. Yeah, absolutely. So most of your high quality interfaces, like the Focusrites, like the Steinbergs, will actually have zero latency monitoring, and you can actually choose what's actually going out from the output. So what's going out from the output of your headphones and your speakers is going to either be the zero latency monitoring or the processed audio. Now, the only sort of caveat here might be that most don't have the ability to select whether, because say you're going out to front of house, out through the TRS jacks on the back, and you want to monitor without in perfect zero latency, but you want the signal going out to actually have the processing through the iPad. That one may be a little bit of a trick and a bit of a challenge, because I'm not sure that with something like the Steinberg, I think when you're monitoring, it will the dial there between zero latency monitoring and processed monitoring is not going to change one or the other. It's going to change both the outputs. So that would be the only caveat there. And that's where something like a mixer may come in. So if you're using a mixer, then you do have a lot more flexibility. You can do sub mixers and different types of mixers that are going in through your headphone jacks. And so the Zoom L8 that I use has 4 different headphone outputs as well as its main output. So you can basically have 5 separate sub mixers. So that may be something to consider. Maybe a mixer is more what you've been looking for there. But thank you for the question. EmoBot 9000, interesting question. Do you think Apple is done updating GarageBand? I thought about this question just yesterday because I was looking at my back catalogue of videos and I thought, gee, it's been a while since Apple updated GarageBand in any significant way. And I actually thought, well, for me personally, this is slightly a good thing because all of the videos I've made for the last 4 years are all still almost 100% relevant. So if Apple went and released GarageBand 3 and just completely reshaped everything, then yeah, I'd have the good side, which would be I'd have a whole bunch more videos to make. But the bad side is that the back catalogue of every video I've made and all the Q&As and all the FAQs would be completely done. Do I think that they're done with it? I don't know. I think they're pretty happy with it. I think that they're just saying, hey, this does what we say it does, and anything we do more to it is only going to complicate things. And I think the play with the silicon chips coming to the new Macs and that are already in the iPad Pro, I think that the next play in this is that Logic is coming to whatever platform they call that, the iOS/silicon hybrid platform, and your iPad Pro, you're going to have the ability, and even your iPhone Pros, you have the ability to update and to start using Logic. So Logic Pro for the iOS sort of. So for the Silicon/iOS. So yeah, to answer your question, are they done with updating GarageBand? Probably in the short term. I could be completely wrong with that. I don't think it's going away. Like we've been hearing for like 2 years that Apple are going to remove GarageBand. They got no interest in removing GarageBand. It's still one of the apps that will sell a lot of their products. And I know people that are buying iPads right now because they see the channel here and they're like, I didn't know you could do that. They go out, they buy a $200 used iPad. They're using GarageBand. They're producing music in a couple of days. So thank you for your question, though. I'll come on down. I think I saw one more question, and then we are going to have to jump back to the pre-questions and make sure that we are done there. Let's see. I think we're caught up, so we'll jump back over. Yes, Sion says that GarageBand is Logic Lite, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. It's a light version. I waited too long, and now my coffee is cold. Let's jump back over to the questions from the week. We will pop these back up on the screen for those that are watching. Aisha Beats, speaking of mixers and audio interface, says, good day, I have a question. Is it okay to buy a mixer for home recording? Because my plan is that I'll be doing live performance, but also home recording. It doesn't mean that I'm doing the same. It doesn't mean that I'm doing at the same time. What I mean is that if I use a mixer for doing both, is it okay? Yeah, so again, a good question. And the short answer to this one is, yeah, it's 100% okay to use a mixer. Now, I've done quite a few videos on this, and I've got quite a few recommendations. So if you want my recommendations, you can go to the website shown on the screen right now, which is studiolivetoday.com/gear. That is my gear guide. That's where you'll find all of the gear that you need to record in the home studio and all of my recommendations. So when it comes to mixers versus audio interfaces, what you're going to find is that let's compare, say, at the $100 level. So at $100, you can buy something like a Focusrite Scarlett Solo, you can buy a Steinberg UR12, or you can buy one of the cheaper Behringer mixers, which is like a 5 or an 8-channel mixer. They're Q-series mixers. Now, the difference there is that because the Behringer mixer has to have a whole bunch more features, so it has to have compressors and EQs, and it has to have multiple channels, it still only outputs stereo at that price point. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You're only going to get a stereo output, but you can still record 2 channels by just putting one channel all the way to the left, one channel all the way to the right, and recording 2 channels that way. So you get the same sort of thing. But here's the rub, and that is that because an interface is simpler and the components are simpler, you tend to get better quality. So the reason that I recommend a 2-channel interface over a 2-channel mixer when you're starting out is that your interface is going to have higher quality preamps, better analog to digital converters, and a better overall quality of sound. Now, as you start going up in price and functionality, that kind of starts changing. So as you get up into the $300, $400, $500 range, and you're looking at the mixer versus the audio interface, then the components kind of catch up. So for me, I've got a Steinberg UR44, which is a 4-channel. It's actually a 6-input audio interface. Really good quality, does a great job. I've also got my Zoom Live Track L8, which is a 8-channel mixer, but also a hybrid audio interface, which also does a great job. Now, the preamps on both of those are pretty equal. The Steinberg probably has it by a whisker, and the same with the digital audio conversion. But the mixer still does a pretty darn good job. So these days, the gap between things has actually closed up. However, all of that said, if you are doing live stuff, if you're doing live streaming, if you're doing live performances and concerts, then yeah, your mixer is probably the first thing you want to buy, because that is going to give you everything you need, including the ability to use it as an audio interface. The one final thing I'll say there is make sure it is a USB mixer. Make sure it has a USB connection, otherwise you won't be able to connect up and actually record digital audio. It must be USB for you to do that. Let's continue on here. I did a video on the free Lexus audio editor for iOS, which is a great little audio editor. And I got a question here. Can we slow down and go fast? Short answer, yes, we can. You can. So the Lexus audio editor, if you missed that one, just Lexis. It is a free audio editor for iPhone and iPad. It does a really good job, and for free, you really can't go wrong. It's got like noise reduction in there, and yes, it does have the ability to change the pitch and change the speed. Like most things, the engines that they use for these things do not make it sound perfect. You cannot take, like, audio is samples in time. If you have samples and then you reduce the number of samples by half to slow something down to half, it's going to sound choppy. And even when you speed something up, the algorithms they use, they're not perfect. But it is a great little audio editor. And if you are looking to edit audio on your iPad or iPhone, Lexis, Lexis audio editor is a good thing. Just go to the YouTube and search Lexis. You'll probably find one of the 2 videos that I did about it. Lexis for iPhone and iPad for the win. Question here from One Step Music about multiple USB devices. It says, it can play USB mic and MIDI keyboard at the same time without using an interface. Yeah, so what you can do, and I've talked about these before, but once again, if you want to check out the gear guide, if you head over to studiolivetoday.com/gear, the section there where I show all of the gear that I use in the home studio, one of the bits of gear that I think is almost essential, especially for a mobile studio, but even if you're using a Mac or a PC or especially a laptop, is a powered USB hub. I use the little 10DAC 4-port powered hub. There's others by Atola, by Orcrew, by Anchor brand. So it doesn't matter what you get, but it needs to have the ability to power itself. So plug into AC power to power up those USB ports. Because what you can do then is if you use something like I showed earlier before, so with a USB-C based device, you can use something like this Cable Creation USB-C adapter, or if you're using an Lightning-based iPhone or iPad, you'll need the Apple Lightning to USB adapter. Then you can actually connect up a powered hub to that, and instead of getting one USB port, you get 4 USB ports, 7 USB ports, 10 USB ports, however many you have. So to answer your question here, can you use a USB mic and a MIDI keyboard at the same time without using an interface? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And yeah, all you need to do is get a powered USB hub and the adapter, plug your USB mic and your MIDI keyboard in there. You can then also plug a regular mouse and keyboard, a USB flash drive. You can use those all at once. The only thing you can't do is have two devices that are audio input or output devices. So if you've got two USB mics and you want to use both of those, not going to happen because one will just completely replace the other. The same if you've got an audio interface and a USB mic. One will just override the other. It'll either nothing will work or one of them just completely won't work because iOS, by its very design, can only accept one audio input and one audio output at the same time. So if you want multiple microphones, you'll need to get a multi-channel mixer or audio interface and plug that in and use that, as we've been talking about throughout the show. Next one here, let's talk copyright. Everyone's favorite topic. So this one's from Jew Prevel, says, Pete, if I use copyrighted content, footage or music, and upload it to YouTube, they will immediately detect it, or might it happen later? I heard they do it immediately. So yeah, interesting and great question. So I'm quite experienced with this now because through trial and error, I've been working on this for the last year. So I do 2 shows here on the channel. I do Your Music Live every weekend, every Friday afternoon, evening, Saturday morning, depending where you are in the world. And I do my happy hour show. So one of those is where I showcase your music. So music created by the community here. We had a great show yesterday with heaps of really cool tunes. And then on the other show, I actually play my own music, but I do some cover versions of songs. And what actually happens is after I do those shows, within about an hour, I get an email from YouTube saying, YouTube has detected some copyrighted content on your video. What's going to happen? Well, it's a copyright claim. So here's the thing. Most of the time when you're using copyrighted content on YouTube, it'll be a copyright claim. What can happen is if you blatantly and flagrantly play like an entire commercial release of another band and their studio is not too happy about it. Their what am I trying to say? The record company is not happy about it. They can actually issue a takedown notice or a copyright strike on your video. So if I just sat down and got the entire album of Pearl Jam's Nevermind and played it end to end and say, there you go, there's my video. Well, yeah, I would probably get a copyright strike because they would realize that I'm playing the entire content of a copyrighted piece of music. What I do on my show is I play about 1 minute of people's songs. Some of those people have gone through someone like CD Baby or Amuse, who has content ID through YouTube, and then it will get claimed. So I think yesterday 5 of the 20 songs I played had a copyright claim. So that just means that it will put a claim on there, and then any of the revenue made from that video through advertising doesn't go to me. It goes back to, it's shared among all the creators. Now, when I do my own live show, it does the same thing. So I'll play a bunch of covers. Tonight I'm doing an Australian cover show, so I'll play some songs, and then if I play an In Excess song, well, then it might get claimed, and then that song will say, yep, you can do some sharing of revenue. So sometimes it's not just completely that you don't get anything. You might only get a small chunk of it because most of it goes back to the original artist. So yeah, it's worth understanding that and being aware of it, because if you use anything that's someone else's, you can't expect to not have some sort of consequences. And your question there about happen later, yeah, so it can actually happen. There's 2 ways it can happen, automated and manual. So automated is exactly what I just talked about there. It listens, it finds the songs, it says you use them, and it claims them. If the record company or someone representing them is going through videos and they find that you've used audio that hasn't been detected, they can put in a manual claim. And that's why you'll see that sometimes it happens immediately, sometimes it won't happen for a while down the track. Alrighty, we've got a heap of questions here today, and I do want to keep this to a reasonable length here on the show today. I'll just see, yeah, we've got a few we've got a few more questions there, but we may have to pull those or pop those into next week's show because I wanted to make sure that we do have some time here to continue on in 6 minutes time. So straight after this one, we have the boys, Stu and Andy, the Indigo Sunsets. If Jade's here and if she's listening in, if you can drop a link to the show, I'll do it again at the very end of the show. But yeah, if you once we finish up on this one, make sure you jump over there and check out the album release of that. And if you're watching on the replay or if you're listening over on the podcast, then yeah, come and check the video, check the link to that, or just search the Indigo Sunsets on YouTube and you'll be able to do that. Jade has jumped straight in and come to the party. There you go. Up next is the premiere of the Indigo Sunsets debut album, The Comeback. Click the link to set your reminder. Do it now. All right, let's mop up here the last 5 minutes. We'll do some lightning round to see if we've got any questions we can answer really quickly. Paul Hogholm says, I have finished a stereo mix, but I want to edit a section out or even drop something into it. Is there an app I can import it into to do the job? So, yeah, I mean, I would use, to be honest, I use Garageband for this sort of thing. So if you've got a stereo mix and you want to add something to it, edit it, cut out a section, insert a section, Garageband on iOS is actually really good for that. If you're on a Mac or a PC, I mean, Garageband again on Mac, Audacity on PC is good. I use Reaper on the PC. That's a really good app for doing that sort of thing. Has a lot of control over exactly where you want to cut things and bring things in. So, yeah, it depends on what platform you're using. But, yeah, I think Garageband does as good a job doing stuff like that as anything. I've used that exact functionality before to bring two different, like when I'm doing a key change or a what am I trying to say, tempo change on a song, I use that to actually split between the two. So yeah, that's something that I would keep in mind. But thank you for your question. Just going to scroll up here and see if we have any other questions before we finish up. If I have missed your question, please jump back and put something down in the comments. Talking about interfaces, Jade says I have both interface and mixer, Steinberg UR22 and the Yamaha MG10XU, which is class compliant and love it. Yeah, so I didn't really mention it, but mixers for iOS, the Yamaha MG series is good. The Samson Mixpad series, which I have, is good. And yeah, even the Zoom mixers that I have here is good. Sean says, question, can we use two interfaces, audio interfaces? Not with iOS. So iOS will only let you have one input and output at a time. So everything else won't quite work. So apologies for that. Yeah, you need to have just one audio interface there. One final question here from Juan Pablo. Says, question, if I used automation, how do I take it out if I decide it doesn't help at all? You just go into automation and turn it off. So if you put your automation in using GarageBand, you go into your track, you tap on automation, and you slide that little sucker off in the corner, and that's it. You can just remove it, and then it's gone. Or you can actually tap each point and delete them if you want to make sure that they're completely gone. But there's a little spot there that says yellow. You tap on that yellow thing, it turns unyellow. Unyellow? Just made up a new word. So if you do want more information on that though, please do head over and just search Pete Johns Automation on your YouTube or go over to studiolivetoday.com. In fact, because we are finishing up here, I will tell you that all the things you need to know about what goes on here on the channel is over at studiolivetoday.com. That's where you can check out the merch. If you want to pick up a cool mug or t-shirt, you can join us on Patreon if you want to become a patron of the channel. That really helps out. And of course, you can check out the more than 1,200, I think I just crossed 1,200 videos here on the channel, all about GarageBand, mobile recording, home recording, copyright, releasing music, all the things that you need to know about home recording and working in the home studio is all there. And you can, of course, become part of our great community here on YouTube, as well as over on Facebook and all the places. So thank you again, everyone, for your support. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the great questions. Hope you learned a thing or two on the show here today. I had a lot of fun, and I do appreciate you coming along live. For those on the replay, I do appreciate you watching, subscribing. Got some value today, hit the like button. That's the one final thing I'll ask you to do. Apart from this, please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating music. Rock on, folks. See you real soon.